Welcome to the Lunch and Learn series. The Immaculate Heart community sponsors this every month because we like to get together like-minded folks to talk about criminal justice, social justice, and other issues of our times. Will the members of the Immaculate Heart community who are here please identify yourselves so you can see who we are? Thank you. We welcome our chair of the board, Ray Mattis, is here with us today. We're happy to see Ray with us. And if you're here for the first time, we really welcome you. And I try to circulate, and I did meet some new folks here today. So when you're here for the first time, I like to give a little infomercial about the Immaculate Heart community. And as Michelle said, you can hear about our history through the documentary Rebel Hearts, but we want people to know who we are today too. So you might guess from our name that the Immaculate Heart community has its roots in a Catholic order of nuns. That changed in the 1970s when we became a lay community. We call ourselves a community without walls. Today, we are Christian-based, inclusive, ecumenical, men, women, gay, straight, married, single. We live all over continental United States, and we have members in Canada and incoming members in England. We accept new members annually. And if you have an interest in membership, please let us know. And check our website for upcoming events and more about our history. So one of the major objectives about our Lunch and Learn series is to implement the community's goals statement, which I like to read to everybody so you know kind of what our orientation is. We are called to build relations in society which foster access for all persons to truth, dignity, and full human development, and to just strategically change practices and situations which impede such access. That's our goal statement. That's what we try to do. And meeting monthly in the Lunch and Learn series gives us an opportunity to begin to form those relationships with people like you. And we thank you all for being here. We anchor our justice and social justice work through three-step process. First of all is education. That's our work today, to expand our consciousness about money and how we use it. Second, we believe in prayer, and we ask our members, or our members do hold the issues raised in the Lunch and Learn series in prayer. And we actually ask you to do the same thing within your own faith tradition. And the third aspect of our work is action. And prayer and education is good, but we believe in putting our faith into action. So in this series, we ask our participants to think about ways you can act based on what you hear today. Listen for one or two things. Could be small, no matter how small is important, but listen for things to make a difference for raising awareness or to advance the issue of conscious choices about how we direct our resources and our resources from different levels of our society. So we're really thrilled today to have Rabbi Heather Miller with us. Rabbi Miller is a graduate of Wellesley College and Hebrew Union College. She's the founder of a group called Keeping It Sacred, and check out their website. It's one of the best ones I've seen in a long time. I'm kind of jealous of it, actually. It's a really good website. According to the website, Keeping It Sacred is a global progressive Jewish community dedicated to the intrepid, I love that, intrepid exploration of sacred texts, the practice of meaningful rituals, and the unwavering pursuit of social justice. They hold fast to the value of promoting human dignity wherever it is threatened. And we think that resonates a lot with our goal statement. So we're really glad to have you with us. Rabbi Heather will guide us in the exploration of the the ethics of money. She will be posing timeless questions for our time and guide insights about how we approach the distribution of wealth, how we relate to our brothers and sisters who are living in poverty, and how our faith can inform our decisions about money and more, much more than that, I'm sure. So thank you for making the time to be with us all today. And please join me in welcoming Rabbi Heather Miller.
Thank you all for having me today. This is so great. We're definitely kindred hearts and connected heart-wise, so I really appreciate being here. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for that generous introduction. And thank you to Pam Hope, who connected us initially. And I heard connected many of us to this group. All right, well, today I'm going to be sharing some texts with you. Now, in the Jewish community, in the Jewish tradition, when we share texts, we're gonna kind of put them up on the screen, but they're not meant to be creedal. They're not meant to, tell you any way to think. They're meant to just put up there and give us an opportunity all to share what we think about them, right? Wrestle with them. The term Yisrael, the Jewish people, Yisrael, literally means Yisra and El. El is God. Yisra means wrestles. Wrestles with God. We wrestle with the text. We wrestle through life, right, as human beings. And we try and find the most ethical way to approach the world. We try to be as intentional as we can. I personally believe that intentionality is the root of morality, right? So we want to be very intentional with how we live. And this presentation will get our wheels turning, and I hope that we have a good little wrestling session. There's no mat here, but my grandpa was a admiral of the Navy, and he said, you should be a chaplain. I was like, well, what did the chaplain on your ship do? He said, the chaplain judged the boxing matches. So this is a different way of doing that. Anyway, it's a pleasure to be here. The way that we at Keeping It Sacred, and I named it Keeping It Sacred because the acronym is KITS, KITS, KITS Community. Kit was my grandma, my loving grandma, my Kit Endler. She always made Judaism accessible, relevant, and empowering. So what we do at Keeping It Sacred before we study any text together is we take a moment to appreciate each other's presence. We're giving ourselves the gift to be intentional and ask questions of life. We're giving each other the gift of our presence in the world and also our wrestling together. So I'd like to invite, if anyone wants to dedicate our learning today in honor of, or with hopes of healing for, or in loving memory of anyone, I'd like to invite you to please just share a name, but make sure you say in honor of that person or in loving memory of that person so we don't mix those up. Would anyone like to share who we're studying in honor of with hopes of healing for and loving memory of? We can start. Yes. In loving memory of Rabbi Yossi Karen. Thank you. It doesn't have to be a rabbi. It was convenient. Yes. In loving memory of Jonathan Wasserberger. Thank you. In loving memory of your daughter, Keisha Jackson. Thank you. Anyone else? Yes.
From Unite 11, who are still wrestling for justice.
Amen. Thank you. Anyone else? Something on your heart? Yes.
Memory of my grandmother, Lillian Baxter Beecher.
In loving memory of your grandmother. Yeah. And I heard someone was here and was like, oh, my children are Jewish. So in honor of them, in honor of, all of these connections that we have, right? I'm standing before you today as a rabbi. My other grandmother is Unitarian. Her father was a minister, Protestant minister, and going back many generations of that, right? My wife and her family she was raised Catholic and her whole family is Catholic in the Philippines, right? We all have these intersectionalities, so it's really important to honor that. So I like to study in honor of that. And then at Keeping It Sacred, we say the blessing for study. So I will say it from myself, and anyone who wants to say amen can, but not necessary. It's Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah, which means blessed is Adonai, creator of the universe, who hallows us with mitzvot and commands us to immerse ourselves in text. Now, immersing ourselves in text is what we're doing. Torah, it says Torah, but Torah means teaching. So we're going to study some teachings in black and white, the texts that are sacred to the Jewish people, but also the teachings of our own lives. So I will be taking this mic off and coming around and asking what you think of those texts, because you all have wisdom as well. And we are all going to experience these texts together. So I honor and would like to express interest in immersing ourselves in each other's wisdom. All right. In the Jewish tradition, we're going to, we approach money. You might have heard of tzedakah, this term called tzedakah, right? It's often translated as the word charity. But tzedakah comes from the root word tzedek, which means justice. So it's not that we should be elated that we're giving charity, but it's actually a moral obligation in the Jewish community to give tzedakah. It's a way of thinking about it that if we have, then we need to also likewise share. Okay, so I'm going to start by sharing with you some questions that the rabbis have. We're called the people of the book, but you might also want to call us the people of the question, because for thousands of years we've been questioning, and I've just pulled out these 7 questions from text, and we'll kind of explore them today, but there's an infinite number of them, right? Is wealth guaranteed to those who have? Is poverty guaranteed to those without? What is more important than money? How shouldn't communal wealth be distributed? And how should communal wealth be distributed? Can you give it all away? And why do we need to be in touch with the experience of the poor? Why should people not wall ourselves off from the experience of the poor? So we'll experience some of those questions, okay? Does anyone have any questions so far? Other questions? Okay. All right, we'll get into it. I'm sure we'll have some questions. Okay, I wanted to share with you 7:30 p.m. on channel 7, Wheel of, yes, I knew it, Wheel of Fortune. Okay, guess what? There's a Wheel of Fortune in the Jewish community, in the Jewish tradition. People know that there is a Wheel of Fortune, and that's where we want to start when we talk about wealth. Okay, the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch says that a person should also consider that fortune is a wheel that revolves around the world. And in the end, a person or their children or their children's children might have to accept charity. Okay, that's just to start. Economic location is fluid. Okay, so the Wheel of Fortune isn't like this. It's like this in the old days. And so you might be on top today, but the children or children's children might be on the bottom. And it's a wheel. And we don't know where we're going to be. So if we're up here, we have a vested interest in sharing with those who don't have. Because we could very easily be them, and they could also easily be us. And I don't know what everyone's economic place is, but I just wanted to share that, right? It's fluid. It's fluid. Does anyone have any questions on that? Any interesting thoughts? Does it remind you of anything? Oftentimes we think about like money is static. Karma? Yeah, there's an element of karma to it. Like the wheel of karma. Yeah, where things are static. Like you have to keep putting into the system to keep getting good out in karma, and that you could go up or down that wheel any time, but you got to keep on the right? Or on the left, depending on where you are. That's a joke. Okay, rabbi humor, progressive rabbi humor. Yeah, so like karma, you have to keep putting into the system, and like that it affects everyone and it affects everything. Yes. You like Wheel of Fortune? Yes.
For me, it feels much more like a pyramid because it isn't an easy up and down. And I work at a shelter for women and children, and they work so hard, and it's just not an easy, maybe it's up, because I think the whole system is designed to keep people down.
And increasingly so, right? That's a really, really good point, right? So whereas it might have been more fluid before, now it's more static. It's more of a fixed system. And it's a pyramid, right? Because we have a very, very small amount of people at the top who have the economic wealth and power of many, many people around the world. Yes.
I remember back in college a long time ago, Econ 101, and thought the first thing we were going to learn about was the law of supply and demand. And the professor or the TA wrote on the blackboard, there's one thing you have to understand about everything that's going to follow, and that is these three words: more is better. More is better, which is not necessarily something that's so obvious or so ingrained in what we, but he's like, it underpins everything that's going to follow. So more is better, more stuff, more money. So.
Like a capitalist interest in having more is more, as opposed to, you know, the theological saying like, I have everything I need. Right? Or what Black Lives Matter often says, right? Like, I want to make sure that we have that everybody's needs are met, and that some people will also have, well, how does it go? That that the needs of everyone are met, and some people will also have some of the things they want, right? Like, but we first have to get that first part of, you know, you don't need everything. We don't all need the brand new iPhone or whatever, right? Like we're good. And that provides opportunity for others to have as well. Beautiful. Yes, we'll go with two more and then we'll keep going.
I just want to share something I think about in my faith tradition. Mary Baker Eddy, who founded Christian Science, said, "Giving cannot impoverish us in the service of our Maker, neither can withholding enrich us."
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you. One more.
Well, that whole Wheel of Fortune thing, the first thing that I thought of is in Mexican music, Jose Alfredo Jimenez used to have a lot of beautiful love songs. And in one song, he says, "La vida es una ruleta, mi amor, todo tiene su principio y su fin." Life is the Wheel of Fortune. Everything has a beginning and an end. And it kind of reminds me of basically how I was brought up. We control nothing. We control nothing. So don't think, it's an illusion if you think you're on the top, and it's also an illusion if you think you're on the bottom.
Yeah, well said. So much wisdom in this group. I love this. This is great. Right. So this idea that, you know, we might feel like it's fixed, but there is opportunity to move up and down, even though it might be hard, and that things aren't static. And therefore, it's an illusion to think we are over here and they are over there, right? We actually are all connected and interconnected. And that's an important conception. Okay, so is wealth guaranteed to those who have? The answer is no. We can, you know, grandchildren and great-grandchildren. I wish they would have said your parents and your great-grandparents might have been different than you are, so they're not like putting that on the children and grandchildren, but that's me. All right. The next question is poverty guaranteed to those without? I want to tell you a story about the great Rabbi Akiva. You might have seen like Akiva, Sinai Akiva, like temple or whatever. This is who it's named after, Akiva. Before he was a rabbi, Akiva was a farmer. And he wasn't a farmer of his own land. He was a farmer on the land of this guy named Kalba Savua. That's just what his name was, Kalba Savua. Kalba Savua had a plot of land, and Akiva would tend to that land. Well, guess what? Kalba Savua had a daughter. And guess what? They fell in love. Before they got married, they fell in love. And she said, I want to marry Akiva. And what did Kalba Savua say? no, I will disinherit you, right? We all know this story, right? No, I will disinherit you. And so what did she say? Too bad. Like, okay, go ahead. So, and I'm summarizing here because I have the text as well. We could put the text up if anyone wants to nerd out. We like to nerd out. I don't want to make you feel like I'm preaching this stuff at you because we're looking at these texts together, but if you do want to put it up, feel welcome to. And so that happened. And so what happened? So they slept on a bed of straw, and he admitted to her at one point. She's like, like, this isn't like your calling. I can tell, like, there's something else going on for you. And he's like, yeah, I want to study Torah. I've always wanted to study Torah. She's like, then you should go study Torah. And he's like, how can I leave you? We're lying on a bed of straw. Like, how can that happen? She said, no, like, I love you. I want you to self-actualize. I want you to be your person. Go study for 12 years. So guess what he did? He did. They got married. He went and he studied for 12 years. Sorry about the gender situation here. We'll just put that aside for a second, right? But that's what happened. And he did that, and he came home, and he was rounding the corner to like come to his house, and he saw like a neighbor talking to his wife. And he overheard what she was saying. She's like, where is that no good for nothing husband of yours? He would have been better off dying so that you could at least move on with your life. So he's overhearing this, and then he overhears his wife say to her, oh yeah, well, if it were up to me, he'd go study for another 12 years. So what happened? And the text doesn't say if he actually said hi, bye, and kiss her and goodbye, but we don't know if he actually like said hello at all. But sounds like he just turned around and he went back and studied for another 12 years. What happened? After these 24 years, he came back to town with 24,000 pairs of students. He became this great Rabbi Akiva, right? Funny what happens when you follow your like calling, right? And the town had this big parade for him. And Kalba Savua was there. And he was like, wait a minute, oops. And his wife was trying to like, hey, hi dear, like, come into like this big parade. And all the townspeople were like, get away, old woman, get away. And he said to them, stop. Your wisdom is my wisdom, and my wisdom was possible because of her. And I picture like Ferris Bueller's Day Off. You remember like that scene and like the big parade? I picture him going like this and bringing her up on the car and then doing the twist. Anyway, but he put everyone back in their place. He reminded them that this was only possible because of her. And guess what? Kalba Savua re-inherited them. Repentance, I guess. So why am I telling you this story? It's like a rabbinic fantasy story about like, study pays off, I guess. I'm interested in like why she let him go for 24 years. Like maybe she like had her own book group or study group or something. That's what I hope. One other thing I thought of, because when I was in rabbinical school, I'd come home and tell my wife all this cool stuff that I was learning. And she's like, ooh, tell me more. Right? The women didn't have access back then. So maybe she was interested in the text, and her only way of getting that wisdom was through him. And so she sent him to them, like, so she could learn too. Maybe. I don't know. This is all conjecture. You can tell me what you think she did or what her rationale is. But the idea is that if you are landless, that can change, right? That, like we said before, the Wheel of Fortune, and it's another way to kind of get back to it. It's another way of saying that money's not everything, that, love is everything, and following your heart and studying and, being close to your purpose is. I don't know. What else do you think about this story? Anything about like the ethics of money? What is it teaching us about money? Or does it remind you of any other story? Or what's missing from this story? Yes.
I think there's something about, I'm grappling with it myself recently with the concept of scarcity, which is connected to econ, that I also, yes, the idea that we're all, I feel like I am scared that I'm not going to have the resources, right? So I'm running and hustling, fearful that I'm not going to have the resources to pay rent. I'm not going to have the resources to buy food. I'm not going to have, right? So I don't think this is true, the concept of scarcity. I'm starting to think that we're told that we live in an environment that's scarce, but then we constantly have technological innovation that shifts our resources and makes more resources with less. And right, so it's like, oh, so maybe we're told that there's scarcity so that the pyramid can keep going and people can feel powerful and feel like they own more than other people and they can dominate. But actually there are resources if we use our brain, we innovate and we create, there are resources.
Yeah.
And if with this concept shifts the whole, right, the whole wheel of for every, if the world is not scarce, then it changes everything, right? So yeah.
Yeah, like you're focusing also on like their boldness of like, yeah, we're gonna like go outside of this pyramid scheme and we're just gonna do what we do. And like we're not gonna worry that we won't have enough. And you know what? And if we just have to sleep on straw, so be it. There's another text in the Talmud that says, what did she do? How did she make money to them? She cut her hair and sold her hair, right? Like the like scarcity is like a myth, right? You just be like, do away with that false, the false dichotomy of, either you have or you don't have, and just have faith that if you build it, you will flourish and everyone will flourish. Yeah, good. Hi.
So I really was aware of the element of trust that she had. So, when we're in the world, and I'm just going to give an example. So somebody who's self-employed and they don't know where the next job is going to come, and you might have a family or whatever, but there's a certain element of trust that it takes to keep the faith.
The ultimate trust fall, right? When I left congregational life and I started keeping it sacred, people were like, what's your business model? I'm like, my grandma is going to make sure it happens. I don't know. Like she died at 100 in 2020. Like, I don't know, but you just have to trust, right? Like, yeah, great. Randy.
And just to piggyback off of what both of you all said, I think the concept of sacrifice, her cutting her hair to make money while her husband was out educating himself, and support. We all need support. And I think when you have a strong level of support combined with the ability to make sacrifice, it's all just having faith, and it's the base of it all. And I think going back to what you were saying about being self-employed and trying to figure it out, I am an example of that. And I just had the conversation last night, just like, wow, some months it's like, yes. And then the next month it's like, okay, what we're gonna do here. But you just make the sacrifices. You don't, and I think, but it takes a certain mindset to be there and to understand that there is a wheel of fortune. And some months or some years you're at the top of the wheel, and then others you may be on the side or at the bottom of the wheel. And just learning, it teaches compassion and being able to, and when I am at the top, knowing to reach down to people that are at the bottom so that I never forget what that looks like or what it feels like. And then when I'm at the bottom, look to the people that are at the top so that you are inspired and constantly seeking to sharpen the axe, versus like working harder, hitting the wood, sharpening it is the goal. So I think the wife making that sacrifice to allow her husband to go and sharpen the axe it made him come back with 10 times over more. And he ended up being the man with the plan, at the end.
Right. You just reminded me of in progressive circles, right? We say like you creep and then you leap, like you get ready to leap. So they were creeping for like 24 years and then they leapt, right? Like get ready for that. The other thing that made me think of is integrity, right? Because you're not like subjecting yourself to the status quo, you actually can be guided by your own moral compass, and stay true to that. So that's another amazing, important piece. Thank you, Brandy.
Yeah, I think integrity, and you touched about it a little bit in something you said earlier. I think that my experience with the flow of that abundance is when I'm truly following the call. When I've gone inside and really sat with whatever is happening and look for that inner guidance. Then yeah, it almost doesn't matter what else is going on. There's a path that's created and whatever is needed comes. And I think that that's part of what I'm hearing in your story too, that he had a strong call to study scripture, just to be a man of God, and she supported him. And so it took 24 years, but they got there.
24 years when you're just married feels like a long time, but later it's not that much.
In truthfulness, my first reaction to listening to the story is, especially as a woman whose husband abandoned her with 2 kids, it's kind of like, oh, that's just great. But in thinking on it as scripture and how we live today, it brings to mind, so how do we define success? And that's very elusive to us. For him, success was that. For her, success may have simply been, I have the choice and I will make that choice. I could have told him, no, you keep your butt here. But I had a choice. And along with illusion, I think that talks to us about perception and what the perception of each one of us in our lives, how we define success ourselves and not let someone else define it for us.
Thank you. Thank you all for holding space for each other, sacred space for each other in this. And I think that you're right. I never thought about that in the story about how her success was that apology from her dad. And like, yeah, she can make her own choice about who she wants to marry. And she got her way and she got her apology and her money. But, like that ability for her to succeed in that.
And her choice about whether he was going to go and do this or stay and be a husband the way the neighbor would have wanted him to be a husband, not the way she wanted him to be a husband.
Yes, I love that, seeing the power of her. Yes, the unnamed her. I saw this hand, and then I'll come to you, Michelle. Yes.
Yes, I couldn't help but think if the roles were reversed, if the husband had been disinherited when the wife wanted to go off and study Torah, would he be as patient as she was? But also, the way the story was written, I believe that she was a woman of grace, and her grace helped him.
Yeah, especially that she didn't buy into the system. Like what Brandy was saying, you don't buy into the system, possibilities open. Yeah.
Thank you. So one thing I want to remember is that this is a capitalist society that promotes this. Back in the day, it wasn't, but really we are fed this narrative that we have to have the newest and the best. And so it creates the need for us to keep acquiring. Our landfills are overflowing because we just have to keep consuming. So that puts us in this late stage of capitalism and exploitation in a different position than this story.
Totally. It's so countercultural too, right? This idea that like you have to have all your success now. No, they were patient. They waited 24 years. And also like that you have to count, like bow down to money and the moneyed class, right? And they're like, no, we're not going to do that. Like, so countercultural in those 2 ways. And then they were, I don't know if theologically they're rewarded for it. I don't really always like the idea of like, you know, you're rewarded with money if you do good things. Like, it's not my theology, but there is, he did become, we're still talking about Rabbi Akiva 1500 years later. So they won.
I think what's also really neat about this story is it's very cyclic, the same way that the wealth circle is that, you know, that Akiva was gone for 24 years and he kind of made his teshuvah, his return to a much different person. And that triggered, you know, that kind of kicked the cycle over so that Kabbalah Savua also kind of made teshuvah in a way. And it's just, you know, everybody kind of back in this ongoing cycle of wealth, of success, of repentance, of return, of respect.
One of the best things religion can do, if it does it well, is like remind people that even if you make a mistake, you can, you know, go back and fix things. And, you know, no one's fixed or static, right? There's a lot of fluidity. Or as my kids would say, it's the first week of LAUSD. They're talking about growth mindset. Yeah, grow. Right? It's not that you made a mistake. It's not bad. It's like, what do we learn from it? Yes, one more.
I just want to say one thing. A year ago, this would have made no sense to me at all. And I'm the one with 2 Jewish children, so I missed something. But I do want to say that if people want to read a very readable book that was brought to us by Rosa and the Dolores Mission community, is Poverty by America. And it's so well documented and it's so powerful. And the one takeaway message I have from that, among many others, is that if I'm well above the median, somebody else is below the median, so I can be where I am. And if you analyze almost everything you do in that context, every day you learn more about why society is where it is today.
Totally. When we drive down the freeway and we see those, you know, $2 million cars or even a $500,000 car, like that's $50,000 cars. So like 9 people aren't getting to work because the money that you donated there was elsewhere distributed. So yeah, exactly. Ready for another story? Are we nerding out? I love getting nerdy. Okay. This one is from Vayikra Rabbah. Oh, good. I love this one. Okay. Just giving you some of the greatest hits. I love these. Okay. This one is very clear, even though it doesn't come to it at the end. Rabbi Yochanan was strolling around from Tiberias to Seapori, right? He's in the, you know, Fertile Crescent. He's in Mesopotamia, going around, and he's going with his disciple. And his disciple is Rabbi Hia Bar Abba, just if you want to know. Okay, they're going around. They're going from one place to the next, and his disciple's like, "Wow, what a beautiful orchard." Rabbi Yochanan's like, "Yeah, that used to be mine." He's like, "What? That used to be yours? What happened?" He's like, "I sold it so I could go study Torah." His disciple's like, "Whoa, that's quite a decision, right?" They're walking around a little bit more. They come to this vineyard, and his student is like, "Wow, what a beautiful vineyard." And Rabbi Yochanan says, "Yeah, that used to be mine." He said, "What? That used to be yours? What happened? How come you don't own it anymore?" He said, "I sold it to study Torah." His disciples like, "Whoa, these choices this guy is making, right? This is my teacher. I don't know about these choices." So they're going around, and then they see an orange orchard. And the disciple says, "That's a beautiful orchard." And Rabbi Yochanan says, "It used to be mine." He says, "What happened to it?" And he said, "To study Torah. I sold it to study Torah." Now, at this point, Rabbi Hia Bar Abba is crying because he cannot understand this. It feels like his teacher has gone through such loss in his life. In his mind, it was lost. And Rabbi Yochanan says, "Why are you weeping?" And he says to him, "Because you didn't leave anything to your old age." That's always our fear, right? That's that scarcity thing. And he said to him, I'm trying to translate it into colloquialness instead of, I'll read it as it is. Is it insignificant in your eyes what I did, that I sold an item that was created in 6 days and acquired an item that was created in 40 days? Does that make sense? He said, right, earth was created in 6 days in the Bible, right? Not literal, but we can talk about it. We can just disagree on that. Anyway, the earth was created in 6 days, but Torah was given after 40 days on Mount Sinai. Do you know the story about Moses got it? He's like, you're mad at me for giving away something that was created in just 6 days to acquire something that was given in 40 days? And then he says, as it was stated, and this is a quote from Exodus. This is where I really nerd out. Exodus 34:28, if anyone wants to look it up later, which says, he was there with the Lord 40 days and 40 nights. And it's written, I stayed on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights. So basically, he's saying, hey, your frame is wrong. We're not here to acquire land. We're here to acquire knowledge, wisdom, purpose, intention, right? So that's just another way to think about what's more important than money, what's more important than land, what's more important than these external signs of wealth, right? It's Torah for the Jewish people, for the rabbis, but it's that higher purpose. Any thoughts on this one? Have you ever questioned a teacher and you're like, why am I studying from this guy? This guy is a little off his rocker. What's going on? I also teach this text when I teach people about how Judaism teaches us to see beyond the surface, right? We don't want to just see what's on the surface. It's so much deeper. Do you want to share again? We win this game. By the way, we are playing a game right now. We win if everyone contributes at least something. So I want to encourage anyone, and also those of you online too, if you'd like to, but you've been adding so much to the conversation. So I don't want to take away from that either.
It's a little embarrassing. I'm sorry. I wish some more of you would talk. It puzzles me with the student who said you didn't save anything for your old age. And as I'm getting older and older, it puzzles me more and more because I keep thinking, why do I have to spend and accumulate and consume every single thing before I draw my last breath? Why can't I leave something for the coming generations? It doesn't make sense to me. And I think of it even more and more when recently I heard that there are some Native American people who have taught that you do not take every single piece of fruit off of a tree. You have to leave fruit there for the next people to come by and for the birds and the animals, because if you take everything off, there are no seeds left. Whereas if the birds and the animals eat it, nature, they are spreading the seed and creating more fruit and more trees. So I don't get the thing of, you got to use it all before you die. No, I don't.
Save it before you die, yeah. Anyone from this table or anyone else? Yes.
I think that like this story to me talks about what we perceive as valuable. Like to me, I've taken I've taken a vow of simplicity, not poverty, because poverty isn't something that I want to be in, but I want to live a simple life. And that, gives so much, living in simplicity gives so much value to other things in my life. Like, so I see that like Rabbi Yohanan, he's very much focusing on what fulfills him, and the vineyard and the orchard and the grove wasn't fulfilling to him, but Torah was. And so it's, what do we perceive as valuable? What brings value to our lives? And land apparently didn't to him, and to his student, land at the time was perceived to be very important. So I mean, I think it's all about perception of what's important, and that's what becomes wealth and value, and has value.
That's why I share these texts, right? Is because they come from a specific tradition, the Jewish tradition, 1,500 years ago at least, right? But they're so universal, these questions that we have, and they're so relatable. I'm coming to this side of the room next, okay? All right. Okay, here's one. Another rabbi travel story. Okay, this is how shouldn't communal wealth be distributed? Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi went to Rome. Okay, think of like to be a Jewish person in the Holy Land at the time, to be under the auspices of the Roman power structure institution, right? So now he's going to Rome. Okay, so what's he see? He saw there, he's like standing there, he's like scratching his head. He's like, what's going on here? He saw like the poor like lying out on these like reed mats. He's like, oh, like we talk about homelessness in LA, right? Like, what is this? And then what does he see? He's in Rome. Columns, big buildings, and guess what? This is the really interesting part in the text mentions. It says that he noticed that the Romans, in the dead of winter when it was cold, they would take these thick carpets and wrap them around the columns of their buildings so they wouldn't crack in the cold. And in the heat of summer, they would take those thick carpets and wrap them around the columns in the extreme heat so the columns wouldn't crack in the summer. And yet their poor were subjected to lying out on these reed mats year round. So I'm just putting it out there, right? The disgust that he felt, that those were the value, really, those are your values? Like, I mean, and we still see the columns, and they're beautiful columns, right? And it worked, but, right? But what, at whose cost? At whose cost? Any thoughts on that? That's how not to distribute wealth, according to Rabbi Levi. That's a pretty obvious one, but we definitely can think of a lot around today, right? These are the battles that are being fought in city council in LA and wherever everyone's tuning in from around the world, right? What are the values, right? You've heard in social justice circles, right, that budgets reflect values, policies reflect values. So what does the budget here, giving budget to the columns being comfortable as opposed to the people being comfortable or even safe, do? Good, a new person. Yes.
What comes to mind is something that startled me when I first heard a conversation regarding our focus on national security and the idea that the biggest allocation of money that I think our country has is in the military and military strength, and which seems to be really influenced by a level of fear and insecurity and scarcity. And so when the conversation starts to become about what could we do if we decided to reallocate some of that and just said, what if instead of having an army 20 times more, supplied than any other country, what if we just had one that was 10 times more? Then we'd have all this extra money, billions and billions of dollars, and I could get by with just 2 billion pretty easily. No, but that's what it makes me think of, is how much we spend on that.
My grandpa, my aforementioned naval grandpa, he was an admiral in the Navy, 3-star, and in his 90s, he wrote a book called Stockpile, which is about nuclear proliferation and how we have this giant stockpile of all these nuclear warheads, so that in the case that one doesn't fire just right, we have a backup, and we have a backup for the backup, we have a backup for the backup, and how that happened. And he wasn't like a peace activist, although I did find a Gandhi book in his collection after he died, which I want to say blew my mind. And I told my uncle I definitely want that for someone who served in like a couple of wars. It was interesting. But yeah, like how much is enough? Like how safe can we be? Do those things actually make us safer anyway? And what can we do, to your bigger point, right? How do we allocate the communal resources, and how can we better allocate them? Yeah, it's really important for reflection of our morality. Yes.
I'm all about winning this game. Yeah. No, but I wanted to add on because my brain went to the exact same space of the amount of money that we're spending on our military, and it's essentially creating more need for this thing that we've said is our biggest need. So by putting more money into the military, we're threatening other folks around the world, and then in turn we need to bulk up more. Like it's just this like self-perpetuating thing. But even on a local level, like thinking about that, what if we took some of that money that went into building up a police department because we're saying we need security, and actually resourced our communities appropriately so that we're addressing some, like valuing and addressing some of the things that are creating levels of desperation or things that are, the cause for or creating the unsafety that, these police are addressing. Like, it's just how do we rethink about that investment of money, and kind of attack it from a different way as opposed to the self-perpetuating fear.
Fear and scarcity and great. Yeah. Ooh, this table's on fire, guys. I only have one more person after this.
Sorry, let me get my thoughts together, and everyone's staring at me, so I get nervous when I'm on the spot. But because I'm like thinking about like even like LA city budget. Like if you think about it, most of our money is going towards cops and funding the police, and we're criminalizing our unhoused community. And so it's like thinking about like that money. Instead of community wealth, why aren't we thinking about community care and like giving people like not only what they need, but they deserve? Like everyone deserves access to mental health, to homes, to food. And so instead of adding money, and then it's like, unfortunately, you have cops in schools, and we have like young folks who are being like detained for like falling asleep in class. But there's like so many reasons as to why things are happening in folks' lives, and it's just like keep putting money towards like more harm, and thinking about the communities that it's affecting, right? From like Sonia Massey to Breonna Taylor to George Floyd, and just thinking about all these folks who have lost their lives because of money going to cops. And so just like rethinking community care, not community wealth, because I believe there's a state where they have whatchamacallit, like policing or like is very different, and they're actually going into the communities and like there are no guns and like that violence, and it's like folks actually have trust in the people who is quote unquote supposed to be their safety and that we're supposed to call and look to. But
yeah, counselors, not cops in schools, right? Like so see, that's what I was gonna go to, Rosa. Like, what if we had social workers writing the law, right? Instead of lobbies, right? Dictating where the money goes. Like, that's so important. Thank you. Oh, we have one more here, and then we're gonna come to Zoom. Yeah, this table is gonna
Well, it was a really good thought. And then I was like, well, I guess I have to now. But I was thinking about when you were talking about like budgets reflect values, right? And like how LAUSD had like a really big budget cut for like education, right? I used to work at a school, and they like had 5 vice principals and they went to 2. They had like 2 attendance counselors, they went to 1. And how like all these resources for like our young folk are like being reallocated somewhere else. And how I'm wondering what that effect is going to be, because schools got so used to like having all these resources and some support, and we saw like the impact that it was having. Like it really helped a lot of people. Like teachers were a little less stressed because there was people on campuses and other things. And also like just kind of wondering like, oh no, I lost the thought, but that's it.
Thank you. Yeah, no, schools. Yeah, good job, table. What's your team name?
The Fantastic Four, because there's 4 of us.
Fantastic Four. Great. No? Okay, passing. Okay. All right. One more here.
I think it's interesting that you've all talked about, or multiple people have talked about funding the military and funding the police. So there's not, all the money is going to the military, to the police, but it's not going to health or to education, or there's less money going to health and education. A country full of very knowledgeable and healthy people sounds like a country where dominating and bullying is nearly impossible. However, it doesn't sound like an unsuccessful country, because if everyone was healthy and everyone was knowledgeable, oh my God, I can't even picture that. I can't even picture the kind of revolution and innovation that would entail, but it would be hard to bully and it would be very hard to dominate other people.
Norway. I've heard, no, I'm sure there's, right, but like, I've never been, but right, their happiness quotient is through the roof, right? So we hear, there are, you mentioned like in other places, like, yeah, other countries do it differently. And what can we learn from that? You ready for another one? I love these texts, what can I say? Okay, all right. Now, where are we? How should communal wealth be distributed? Okay. Yeah, okay. Turnus Rufus. Turnus Rufus was a wicked kind of guy. And here's Rabbi Akiva again. Are we surprised that Rabbi Akiva is going to teach him something? No, because we know he has something to say about wealth. Okay. There's sometimes these stories about these like Roman emperors, Roman people, not to diss anyone in Rome, but they kind of challenge the rabbis. So this is one of those stories. Turnus Rufus says to Rabbi Akiva, he told the wrong guy, I tell you that, if your God loves the poor so much, why doesn't God support the poor himself? And he would have used the word himself. Right? Like, hey, why are you supporting the poor, Rabbi Akiva? Like, aren't you undoing what God did? Like, wouldn't God just help the poor? This is why in Judaism, not only do we encourage your questions, but we'll ask questions that you might not have even thought of, right? I love it. Okay, so he says, so basically that's a good question, right? It's a bad question, but it's a good question, right? Like, what are we doing helping the poor if like maybe this is God's decree? Like maybe God's gonna be mad at us for helping the poor. I said it, please don't strike me down. I'm going to change it. Okay, just putting it out there. That's what Turnus Rufus says. Why are we even supporting them? Isn't God gonna be angry? Rabbi Akiva said to him, God commands us to sustain the poor so that through them and the charity we give, we will be saved from the judgment of Gehenna. Gehenna was like hell. There is like a Jewish kind of a hell, turns out. But anyway. Turnus Rufus said to Rabbi Akiva, on the contrary, it's this charity which condemns you, the Jewish people, to Gehenna, to hell, because you gave it. Okay, so he's basically asking, isn't God going to be mad at you for undoing God's will to make poor people? Okay. And then Turnus Rufus gives a parable. And they always compare God to a king. I know it's patriarchal. I'm just going to put it out there. So this is comparable to Turnus Rufus is saying, a king of flesh and blood. He's like, of flesh and blood, wink, wink. We're talking about God here. A king of flesh and blood who was angry with his slave and put him in prison and ordered that he should not be fed or given to drink. And one person went ahead and fed him and gave him something to drink. If the king heard about this, would he not be angry with that person? So that's the question, right? Isn't this like you're going against the decree of the king? Rabbi Akiva said to Turnus Rufus, I'm going to illustrate my own parable to you. To what is this matter comparable? It's comparable to a king of flesh and blood, wink, wink, who is angry with his son and put him in prison in order that he should not be fed or given to drink. And one person went ahead and fed him and gave him something to drink. If the king heard about this, would he not react by sending the person a gift? And are we not all called sons? As it's written, you are the sons of the Lord your God. Okay. He's saying that no, God's not going to be mad that you're going to feed the poor. Or, aside from the fact that it's kind of messed up that they're saying that God punished these people intentionally in the first place. I get that. And that's what I have an issue with the text. And we can have issues with the text. That's cool in Judaism. But that he's saying that actually, deep down, God actually loves all of us. And whatever the decree is, whatever people's lives have had befall them, God would actually want us to help them anyway. Even if God in God's angry fit, we know God has angry fits in the Bible, right? Like, would still want us to recognize that these people are of God, God's children as well. And we are all God's children in his worldview. I'm not telling you what to think. I'm just telling you what the text would say. That we would be actually rewarded for helping each other out. It's a different way of approaching the story. So we should all think about each other as siblings and of children of God, regardless of our economic class. And that's from that we are responsible to help each other. Any thoughts? I saw your eyebrow go up. Would you like to share anything? I'm not to call you out, just here you go, Allison.
Sister Judy said earlier, you know, I've been so distraught watching young people, you know, go out and work hard and get a job, and then the corporate America keep that person, that worker, from getting full-time work or getting enough work, or when they, you know, approach getting, you know, 20 hours or something, and then they're on their way to work for the next day, and then the corporation says, don't come to work, you know, and it's that the greed that is running our country or whatever. I'm not going to get into who, you know, you fill in the blank, right? Rome or whatever. Then the work that I do, listening to people constantly with hate, us and them, you know, and I'm exhausted from it.
Yeah, it's at its heart, right? People are forgetting that we're all caregivers to one another, right? Like when corporate America says, the context that you're saying is like, you can only have a part-time job so that then we won't have to give you health benefits. And now you have to have 3 part-time jobs because no one will give you a full-time job. And now you have to coordinate the schedules between those 3, which might change, which is also hell to work on. Corporations or leaders are not treating people like they are children of God, right? They're saying like, you're disposable. And that's a huge moral issue of our day. Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah, when we forget that we're each precious limitlessly, that's a big issue. All right. Oh, Rosa, we're on a first name basis now. One more. Fabulous 4 once again.
I'm sorry, embarrassing, but the story I'm thinking of when I saw that question, how should communal wealth be distributed? And before I heard about the Rabbi story, was the manna in the desert, because it came down every single day and it was just enough. And if anyone tried to hoard it, the next day it was all rotted. And I'm thinking, if anything, the story is nice, you know, wouldn't God be angry? Well, how about what God did? God said you're going to get just enough and you're not going to hoard it all.
That's right. Thank you. Yeah, that's what throws off the distribution of wealth in the first place. Did I see someone here wanted to share something? Anyone? Yes, you did. Okay. I thought so.
It also reminds me of what Matthew said. Jesus said, "Inasmuch as you've done it unto one of the least of these, my brethren, you've done it unto me." And so we are all one and interconnected. And we're not doing it to someone else. We're doing it for ourselves.
Totally. I worked for the Institute for Policy Studies, which is like progressive think tank in DC. And at the time it was 2000, 24 years ago, I think that we were like angry. Sarah Anderson wrote this awesome report in 2000. You can look it up, but we were like angry that the top CEOs were getting 700 times the salary of the lowest worker. Well, now that number, well, the last I checked, it was 1,200 times average. But now I don't know what it is, but like what you were saying before, right, about the stockpile and military industrial complex, like what if it was just 3 times as much? Like, is that okay? Like, does it really have to be 1,200 times as much? That's part of the problem. All right. Yes. Oh, we do have a comment on, yes, how would you like to do this? Put the mic there or? Oh, it's written out, please. Okay, we have it online. Hello to whoever's online.
This is from Deborah, Deb. Matthew 25, 35, 37 suggests that God wants people to be fed and that they should participate in providing food.
Yeah, and that they should participate in providing food?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, so I don't know that specific text. I'm sure many people here do, but there's this idea of, everybody needs to contribute to the temple, like half a shekel, which is like 50 cents or whatever. Like, everyone has a cursory amount, but everyone has something to contribute. So we're all interconnected. There's not the haves and the have-nots. There's not the donors and the takers, or what's the word instead of the recipients of the funds, right? It's that we're all interconnected and everyone needs to have what they need to have. All right, thank you to Deb. Okay. All right. This is true story. I have a friend who inherited $3 million and she gave it all away, every penny. And she funded a political activist group for women of color in Boston. Okay, so when I was in rabbinical school, when I was in rabbinical school, I came across this story and I was like, you got to hear this story. She was in People magazine. It's out, like people know that she did this. It was like in the 90s, but pretty awesome. So the sages taught there was an incident involving King Munbaz. Now this guy, he's a non-Jewish king. He ends up converting to Judaism. I'm sorry, the Jewish rabbinic worldview is like the Jewish people are the greatest things since sliced bread. I don't think that. I think that everyone is equal, like I said before, but just telling you, King Munbaz is painted in a very good light. There was an incident involving King Munbaz when he liberally gave away his treasures and the treasures of his ancestors in the years of drought, distributing money to the poor. His brothers and his father's household joined together against him to protest his actions. And they said to him, what do you think they say? What is it? What do you think they say? You can't do that. What are you doing giving away our ancestors' money, right? Like, who do you think you are? They built this all up, right? Yeah, so he said, your ancestors stored up money in their treasuries and added to the treasures of their ancestors, and you're liberally distributing it all to the poor. So remember that Rabbi Yochanan story about like the orchard, and this is another Jewish text of like, look beyond the surface, people. I love this part. He was a very knowledgeable guy. King Munbaz said to them, not so. My ancestors stored up below where I'm storing up above. And then this is why I wanted to give you the text, because there's like really nerdy texts in here. He quotes Psalms 85:12, which says, truth will spring out of the earth and righteousness will look down from heaven, meaning that the righteous deeds that one has performed are stored up in heaven, right? So you think I did the wrong thing? Like my ancestors stored up this wealth down here. I'm getting it up there. What else does he say? He goes on. My ancestors stored up treasures in a place where the human hand can reach, and so their treasures could have been robbed. Whereas I'm storing up treasures in a place where the human hand cannot reach, so they're secure. I'm securing our treasures. I'm securing our legacy is really what he's saying, right? As it is stated, anyone is working on fundraising, here's a good one for you, right? Righteousness and justice are the foundation of your throne. That's another Psalm 89:15. He goes on. My ancestors stored up something that does not generate profit, as money sitting in treasury does not increase. Whereas I'm storing up something that generates profit as, right? So he's saying, right, this is the like micro lending. Do you all know the micro lending movement? You know, you give someone some money and they can like start a little store and then they build up wealth and build up wealth. They pay it back and it goes to other people, right? He's saying like, your money's not growing. Mine's going to go green energy all around the community and the world, right? For generations. And he quotes Isaiah 3:10 for that. He says, say of the righteous that it will be well with them, for they shall eat the fruit of their doings, right? He's like, we're abundance everywhere, right? What good does it do sitting in a bank or under a mattress, as the case may have been back then? I don't know. Thank you. Got you. 15 minutes. Good. One more text. Perfect. Okay. My ancestors stored up for others, for their sons and heirs, when they themselves would pass from the world, whereas I'm storing up for myself. That's an interesting one. He's like, it's actually self-serving because now I know all these people. I'm like, that's a good thing. As it is stated, Deuteronomy 24:13, and it shall be as righteousness to you. And then the last one, he says, my ancestors stored up for this world, whereas I'm storing up for the world to come. Got it. As it's stated, and your righteousness shall go before you. The glory of the Lord shall be your rear guard. Right? Just like, flip it. What are you doing, Manbaz? You gave away all of our treasures. No, you guys are, reframe, please. You need to reframe. Was that a hand? No. Okay. Anyone? Yes. This table. Yes. Please, Judy. No.
So I know because you got the buzz over there, but the third part of Immaculate Heart is to move to action. And I think a lot of us here are connected to not-for-profits. And the Not-for-Profit Quarterly not long ago did a whole thing on radical economics and how we need to be what we see and hope for the world. So I was just wondering if anybody here from not-for-profits, Immaculate Heart community, or anyone, your own, can give a couple concrete examples of how we counteract the fear of scarcity, how we pay justly, how we don't have this disparity between those who are quote unquote at the top of the wheel and the workers who are trying just to keep it rolling.
Yeah. Anyone want to answer or reply to that?
Economics, what in the ethics of money, what does radical economics look like for those who take whatever our religious tradition seriously in terms of doing things different?
So I met Karen, who's my friend who did that through a nonprofit I served on the board of in 2000 to 2004 called Resource Generation, which was a group of young people with wealth who wanted to align their wealth with their values for positive social change, right? And it was a cross-class board, so I was on the board, but everyone was under 35 years old and asking these questions. What does radical social redistribution of resources look like? Not only resources of dollars, but resources of connections, resources of knowledge, know-how, how you do things. Like, what does that look like? And how can we, affect change that way? Yeah. Beautiful. Yes. All right. This table's on fire.
So you mentioned the folks who make 1,200 times the lesser, right?
Yeah.
What if they made 100 times less?
Right. Exactly.
What if they gave the example or the model or the whatever of this is how I choose to do this, so that the folks who are getting the 0 level could have some level of more?
Totally. And I don't want to call out organizations, but this is what we're seeing at Disney. This is what we're seeing at Amazon. I could list a lot of corporations, right? Where the workers are saying like, we are putting in 100, we're putting in the same 40 hours as you are. Some of us are putting in 80 hours, like maybe you are in the CEOs, I don't know, right? Like we all have the same time span. What does it mean when someone can make an entire year salary in a day? Right? Like, and that's treating people as disposable, right? And so that's, yeah, beautiful. Excellent question, right? Where's the leadership? Leadership from the top, right? So I worked at Harvard Business School. This is a really fun one, right out of college. And this guy kind of knew my frame. I was a peace and justice studies major and Africana studies major. And so he kind of knew my frame. He's like, Heather, I got to tell you something. I was like, what? He's like, you'll never guess what happened in my business ethics class today. I was like, what happened? He said, there was a business school case, because that's how they teach business school cases at Harvard, Harvard Business School. They said, well, they gave a case of a guy who became a CEO of a major corporation. And he came in and he decided to rid his company of any unethical treatment of workers abroad, right? Right, like benefiting maybe from sweatshops and whatnot. He wanted to like create a gold standard for worker treatment. And the professor said, class, what do we think of this? And they said, there's no way he should have done that because their primary responsibility is to increase shareholder value. So when CEOs' primary ethical responsibility, I said ethical in quotes for anyone online, ethical responsibility, gotta make sure everyone knows, is to increase shareholder value, people become disposable. Do you think the CEO is gonna do that? I don't think so. Like it's the system, right? Is Jeff Bezos really an evil guy? I don't want to ask that question, but right, like it's part of the system, right? So we got a problem. Anyone else from this table want to? Okay, one more. Here you go. I'll come back.
Question directly with an example from my husband's situation. He has worked for LAUSD for 32 years, and he's been fortunate for, I think, since who was the mayor? I can't remember. Garcetti created an experiment of 12 schools called the Partnership for Los Angeles. And so it's kind of an umbrella of administrators of like with schools that feed into eventually getting to high school, right? And so when my husband was approaching like his 24th year of teaching, they took him out of the classroom and put him in a position called instructional leader. So then his day is now teaching the young teachers and supporting the young teachers to become better teachers and taking his wisdom and allowing him to help those students. And because he teaches in Boyle Heights, many of his teachers were his students, A, and B, teacher burnout, which when he has to stay up all night grading papers as a 30-year-old is different than as a 50-year-old. So he doesn't have to do that part of the job anymore. And so in this nonprofit, because the Partnership for LA is a nonprofit, they have found a way to prevent teacher burnout, to keep people employed, to help young teachers be better through example and through leadership. And so I just wanted to touch that as an example of a nonprofit working effectively.
Thank you. All right. One more here.
So I work in an SRO downtown, permanent housing for people that are just coming in off the streets. A lot of them are first-time roofs over their head for decades. And so when I got there, we had a clothing pantry, a clothing closet, and the people that were running it before were like, okay, you can come in and you can get one pair of pants, one shirt, one sock, whatever, one of everything. and people would come every day. I need. Last year, I became in charge of the pantry and told people, take what you need. And so I started seeing not the same faces over and over again. People would come in, they say, and then people would come by and say, "Oh, hey, my shoes broke, or I need a new pair of shoes. Do you have anything?" They just take one simple thing. So by eliminating, by your example, by eliminating the idea that they have to struggle to get one garment per visit, by saying just take what you need. We haven't, our shelves are still completely full. And people don't feel the need to come by every day to hoard what's theirs to support their humanity.
And not only did you give them shoes, we gave them a dignity, right? To choose for themselves what do they actually need, and then they don't have to keep going back, and they can go and move on and go do their thing and then benefit. Yeah, totally. Oh yeah, hi, someone new, Johnny.
Thank you. I think that this is a very interesting approach. And talking about scarcity, I've been puzzled a lot about scarcity. And we have this approach of scarcity to many things like wealth, money, etc. But I wonder, what about scarcity of knowledge? Let's say I know something, I'd share it with someone else. Now I still have my knowledge, but now it's spread. Let's say I love one person, now I love two person, I make another friends. It's not that I'm being drying out of all my love, all my knowledge, etc. I wonder if we can have an approach of, I want to have it all. Let's say I have some wealth, now I spread it. Am I now poor? Because that's the thing, because I think that we are used to, and I've been raised with a lot of problems about wealth. And so it's poor against the rich. But then the rich says, yeah, but maybe I earned this money with my skills. Yeah. So what I'm able to do, you poor people, you're not able to do so. And they might be right at times. That's the interesting fact that at times I tend to forget. So I wonder if it's not about distribution, it's super important, but I wonder if it's not that we have a source of $100 and we gave one to this department, we did give this to the military. What if it's not that we have $100 to start with? What if we potentially have a limited amount of wealth, but we're not able yet to distribute it the right way? It's not about giving less to someone, to found this, to found that, to found someone else. What if we just need to be better at approaching distribution? What if we just need to be better at producing wealth? Because maybe nobody taught to a poor homeless guy how to keep a dishwasher job because they don't know how to do so. So then you have the poor people saying, well, a lot of people saying, it's not right that there's a lot of poverty. That's true, but maybe they're not have been taught how to keep a simple job because they are in a lot of issues. And that's the problem, maybe. It's not just about giving money to people that don't have money or taking money away from people that have money. It's about creating a system, and that's the point, creating a system where everyone have their needs met somehow. And then I remember talking with my dad a lot of years ago about, yes, right away, about someone being extremely rich, the CEO being extremely rich, but what if they're actually good at that, but you really give money to everyone so that everyone's happy? And if I want to work more, if I want to be better, well, you can earn more. But it's about, I think, the system of providing the wealth to everyone.
And in science, my brother's in science, and that's open source. He does 3D printing of organs, human organs, but he open sourced it. He's not like, this is my knowledge. He wants to share it with people so that it can, everyone, you get an organ and you get an organ, you get an organ. And back to Oprah. Okay, one more quick text. How many? 2 minutes, yes. One quick thing.
I'm gonna be real quick. Basically what he said, the bottom line is, you can't keep it unless you give it away. Basically, that's a 12-step thing, but basically not giving away the money, but the knowledge, teaching people. It doesn't always have to be the money, just helping each other.
Resources. All right. How many of you have been to a Seder, a Passover Seder? I'm not giving you brownie points for that. I just want you to draw on your experience for that. If you haven't been, you can come to Keeping It Sacred's one online. And I'm not just joking about that. You can. In the Seder, we open up the door for Elijah. You've seen that? Open up the door for Elijah. Elijah's the human symbol of the Messiah, the coming of the Messiah, the day when everything is just and equal. Okay, I have to give you that context before I teach you this last text, which is, why do we need to be in touch with the experience of the poor? The Babylonian Talmud is talking about, like, who has to give to like communal public works and all this stuff. And then does everyone have to give to make a gatehouse? And then, like, wait a minute, maybe we shouldn't be making gatehouses, right? I apologize to anyone who lives in a gated community. I have feelings. I acknowledge them. I'm biased. They say, someone in the Gemara, this is like a rabbinic text, it's an unknown person, so that means it could be anybody. One of the rabbis says, is this to say that making a gatehouse is beneficial? Like, wait, maybe we shouldn't be making gatehouses. Why? Wasn't there a pious man with whom the prophet Elijah was accustomed to speak, who built a gatehouse, and afterward Elijah did not speak with him again? If we build a gatehouse, we're no longer in touch with our neighbors. We're no longer in touch with people of different socioeconomic classes. We're no longer in touch with people. And guess what? Who is Elijah? The representation of the Messiah, right? The representation of what we're building for justice to reign on earth, right? So if we wall ourselves away from whole groups of the community, we deny ourselves the world to come for everybody, the Messiah. We're the ones keeping the Messiah from being here because we're building these walls between communities. So with that, I will end. I just want to thank you all. This is a beautiful community of no walls, like such a diverse, amazing group of people. And I really appreciate you all going through these texts with me. And I pray for a day that we don't have these walls and that all of you in this room create the budgets and policies for the world. Oh, I have one more.
Website.
Oh yeah, sure. My website, keepingitsacred.com. Oh, I think Michelle's going to do that for us. Keepingitsacred.com and Rabbi Miller at keepingitsacred.com. I think you might be giving the texts if you want. If anyone wants these texts, you can have them. Go ahead and use it. Yeah.
And so if you registered online, we have your email, so you will get the link that you can rewatch it, and we'll share the text that you see on the board. If not, just get we'll collect your email on the way out if you'd like it.
So thank you all for
nerding
out with me, seeing some of my favorite texts and sharing your Torah, your knowledge, your wisdom. Thank you.